You've accomplished something that will last way beyond your individual efforts. And you've shown how journalism can bite the ankles of the powerful and still be the voice of the little guy. Along the way, you've made your corner of Vermont a better place. And it doesn't get better than that, my friend.
Anne Galloway has done something inspiring. She's made a mark on Vermont, and Vermont journalism has made a mark on the entire country. Having experienced firsthand the changes happening in print journalism and the loss of coverage of state government, Anne launched an online news organization with a focus on the Vermont State House with just one reporter, herself. Years later, Vermont Digger has a 25-person newsroom among the best journalists, I think, in the country. And Vermont covers news from all corners of the state. It helps knit us together. Good journalism is absolutely central to our democracy. Voters need trustworthy, reliable information on which to make decisions, and leaders need to be held accountable. Government works best when it's transparent. Anne has dedicated her professional life to ensuring that transparency. Her work has been an active service to our state. Thank you, Anne, for your determination, your commitment to finding and telling the truth in the creation of Vermont Digger, which will continue your work of holding people like me to account. I know whatever you do next, you will do it with the same integrity you've demonstrated at Vermont Digger.
Bob and Rita at Burnham. I think he's here. Thank you, Bob. And now I'm so excited to introduce onto the stage my two favorite journalists, one of whom some of you know as a powder hound, some of you know as the host of the Vermont Conversation, also the VT Digger podcast. But I know as the guy who brings me my coffee every morning. My husband, award-winning journalist David Goodman. And joining him, our Shiro, the woman of the night, the one and only Anne Galloway. Please give us
Well, Anne, welcome back to the Vermont Conversation. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very blessed and completely overwhelmed. This is just so mind-blowing. Thank you very much. We're all in this together. We all made it happen together.
Well, I thought it would be, some people have heard little snippets of the origin story. And, this is a rare moment. We've heard so much about the decline of journalism, how by 2025, 1/3 of America's newspapers will be gone. And we're celebrating a success story, a rare success story. And I think about Vermont journalism, and we're going to have to start referring to it in terms of BV and AV, before Vermont Digger and after Vermont Digger. You've been a transformative figure here, but as we've heard from so many people, from Brian McGrory and others, even nationally, that independent, nonprofit journalism turns out to be right up there with maple syrup and Ben & Jerry's as one of Vermont's great exports. You were very nearly a casualty of this contraction in the media world. And in 2009, you lost your job as a reporter and editor at the Rutland Herald and Times Argus. Now, most people who are set adrift swim for safety. you swam further out into uncharted waters and decided to create your own news organization. Why?
Brian asked me that question when I spoke with him, and I honestly don't know why. I think I just, it was, I believe so passionately in the work of the journalists that at the Times Argus and Rutland Herald, and I started going to investigative reporters and editors conferences, and I just felt that the state wasn't being covered. You know, even when I was an editor, you know, the Sunday editor for Rutland Herald and the Times Argus, and so when I was laid off, I just thought, damn it, I have to do something about it, and I didn't know how, I pretty much abandoned my poor family. You know, I wasn't making any money, and I just, but I really WordPress opened their sandbox, so that felt hopeful. And I went to the Vermont Small Business Development Center, and I created a business plan. You know, both my grandmothers were entrepreneurs, and a little bit my bones. And I had this business plan that I submitted to the Vermont Community Foundation that was like a 20-year plan, you know. And I remember after like 3 or 4 months of working on this thing, I thought, this is going to take forever. I'm never going to get there. But I kept working on that plan. Like I didn't even, I think, you know, like in the last couple of years at Digger, I felt like we got there with the original business plan.
Well, what was this crazy online thing that no one had ever tried before? What was it going to be in 20 years? What were you selling to the Community Foundation?
I was selling a full-blown online news organization that was supported by readers and underwriting, and I basically ripped off the NPR model, and you must be real. I just thought, hey, if it works for NPR affiliates, why can't it work for online news? So, you know, that was the idea. And actually, I wrote a letter to Peter Welch and to Bernie Sanders and to Patrick Leahy. I pitched the Corporation for Public Media in March of 2009, supporting local news. I just had a vision, and I just started going for it, and I don't know why, honestly.
It must have been lonely and scary, and nobody likes journalists, except our spouses, and sometimes they don't either.
It's true.
So why keep going? You know, why not do something else, like whatever that might be?
Well, you're a powder hound, right? And I think I started getting an adrenaline rush from all the craziness. You know, it really was like, you know, being on a roller coaster. And what was next? And I was just so curious about, first of all, I just love reporting. You just go into it and you never know what someone's going to say. And you have this opportunity to try to connect with people. And it's this weird dynamic where, in my case, I just was so curious, and I didn't necessarily see it as a transaction. I just wanted to understand what was going on, and so I just let it all be driven by my curiosity. It was all about the curiosity, like what's next? What's next? I mean, are we going to be able to do this membership thing or not? I don't know. What's next? Let's try. I just love the experimentation. You know, I love trying new things, and then it just kind of took over my life. So then I didn't have a choice.
So, you know, part of a startup is you encounter a lot of failure, and survival is determined by what you do after you get knocked down. How did you keep picking yourself back up and reassuring yourself that this crazy idea that you had could work?
Well, you know, honestly, it really came down to the readers, because I would have a bad day. I always had, like, it was a roller coaster, and there were not only just bad days, there were bad moments, and then there were so many highs and lows in one day, it was hard to keep track. but readers kept reaching out to me and saying, thank you, and we need this, and, thank you, and you need this, and keep going. People just said, keep going, and that kept me going, because I knew they needed the information, and that really gave me a lot of steam. Really, it was about the readers, that reciprocal relationship, which is why I was so into the tips. I was obsessed with reader tips, which drove the staff completely crazy. But to me, that was the connection with people. The little guy, Mara was talking about the little guy, and I was always about the little guy. And what I just believe in the power of ordinary people asking questions, and they know what's going on, and they've got questions, and boy, are they good. They're always, I got to the point where, we'd host debates and stuff, and to the staff, I was like, I don't have better questions than what the readers have. Look at these reader questions, they're so good. They're way better than anything I come up with. And so we just started using them, and that's how I felt about the whole project. It was always about the relationship with the readers.
One of the things that Vermont Digger has been a laboratory, an incubator to so many young reporters, many of whom are in the room here. And full disclosure, because you always do that as reporters, my son was a Vermont Digger intern.
He was a great intern.
Well, now I'm just putty in your hands, so these are like seeds you're throwing out into the world, and they are blossoming all over the country. But young people are looking at the world of journalism and wondering if they've just, they're being offered a ticket on the Titanic. What is your advice to young journalists?
Well, there's no job that's more fun. You're learning something new all the time. If you're open and curious and you're listening and you like people and you care about the world, there's nothing more fantastic than being a reporter. It is just so dynamic, and if you get bored easily, it's the perfect solution.
One of the challenges of being a reporter in a small state like Vermont is practically everybody that you're reporting on. You know the people you've got to expose. Talk about that challenge of being a reporter in what is essentially a big, small town.
Yeah, that was, I never knew when I walked into the State House what was going to happen. Because, we published a story the day before and we exposed something, and, sometimes people would look at me and they would, they'd turn away, or they, that social stuff. Yeah, the State House is kind of like a high school or junior high, people say, and especially the cafeteria. People sit in groups, and the Republicans are up there, the Democrats are in the front, and the lobbyists are in the back, and you get to know everybody. And so my strategy was, after a while, I just thought, that saying, everybody is going to wonder what you're thinking. You've got a smile on your face, so I just would smile, and pretend nothing was wrong. Even though I just lambasted somebody the day before, I'd say hi, be polite, and except for once I yelled at the Lofi and the Cedar Creek firm, but that's a different story. I had to chew them out, but mostly I kept my cool. But yeah, it's a pressure cooker. The state is, and that's why it's so hard to write about. Tom Carney was talking about the story that Peter Daria, who's here today, is writing about Kern Hatton, and I got it. It was so hard. I wrote the first piece about it, and then Lola Dufford is here tonight, also wrote about it. And it's like people close ranks around the story in communities, and it's incredibly hard to find out what the truth is because no one will talk to you. And so there's a kind of soft corruption that we don't like to talk about in the state that's really about, we won't go there. We just won't talk about it. And I think that's a real problem because you can't come up with a solution if you're not willing to talk about the problem. So, you know, I have a lot of, I actually, you know, feel badly sometimes about the way I've grilled politicians, including your wife. But, you know, but I deeply, actually deeply respect the work of government officials, and I believe in government, and that's why it's so important for government to work. And government only works when reporters are doing their jobs and helping the public understand what's happening. And then the public can respond, and that was the whole theory behind here was I'd go into committee rooms, I'd cover them with a video camera, whether they liked it or not, the public would see it, and then people could respond to the budget. They could, and they did in the comment section, and so it was always about reader empowerment. And so I just concentrated on the readers and I ignored all the people who hated me, is the bottom line.
Somewhere in America, 2 newspapers are turning out their lights this week and publishing for the very last time. Every week, 2 newspapers and publication. 1/5 of the country, 70 million people, now live in a news desert. What gives you hope?
Oh, there's so much hope. I mean, there's so many crazy people like me out there, you can't even imagine. And, you know, I think that what's, you know, there are almost 1,000 online news organizations now across the country that have formed to fill the void. There's a group at the UNC Chapel Hill Project Oasis, which is run by Penny Abernathy, and she's keeping track of all these organizations, and that's the good news. The good news is there are a lot of people who are looking at our model, they're looking at Texas Tribune, and they're learning about how to do this because people have studied what we've done, and they've, you know, written books about it, and they've, you know, come up with guides and all kinds of things to support people, and there's been a recognition that this is a movement now. And so there's a huge initiative by funders through Press Forward, that's the name of the initiative, that's backed by the MacArthur Foundation, the Knight Foundation, and a number of other large donors and funders across the country who recognize this problem, and they see that there's a need, and they're trying to support the people who are doing this work across the country. So I have great hope. They have $500 million, which sounds like a lot of money, except as John Thornton, the founder of AJP, says, Americans give $2 billion a year to dance companies in this country. So can we level up here? Can we get to $2 billion? He just wants $2 billion. I think he's been saying that for years, and it's a funny joke, but it's also true. Like at some point, you know, we really have to step up as a people and recognize that the only thing that's going to protect our democracy in the long run is local reporting, and that's because local reporting is what brings people together. I think that, you know, the other really hopeful thing is that, you know, like I said, there are all these groups now supporting these organizations, so you don't have to start from zero like we did at Digger or they did at Texas Tribune. There are lots of supports out there for groups, and so they're getting a leg up that's going to accelerate this movement and make it possible for community news to survive in this country.
So you no doubt get asked all the time by people where perhaps the local newspaper has failed. They want to do what you did. What's your biggest piece of advice, single piece of advice?
Just one.
Just one. They have to pay for the master plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess the biggest piece of advice is figuring out what your purpose is, why you want to do it. Because if you know why and who you're doing it for, then you can walk through fire. But if you don't have that, you got nothing. That's true in anything, right?
what's your purpose?
I'm trying to figure that out right now. Yeah, I'm in transition.
What do you think, you began as one person, I believe Vermont Digger is now 28 people. What do you think Vermont Digger is going to look like in 10 years?
Oh, gosh. What, do I get to espouse on the, propound on the strategic plan? Boy, Sky, watch out. Well, I'd like to think that Digger could help support more community news around the state in some fashion. I don't know what that looks like, but I do think that community news organizations are really struggling, and that's because their readerships are really small, they're in tiny places, but what they do is irreplaceable, and Digger can't really do that work right now. It's hard enough doing the statewide work, so I think at some point it would be really helpful if Digger could find a way to support the Herald of Randolph. I was talking with some folks about that earlier tonight, or other small newspapers that are vital to their communities and bring people together, but that are really struggling.
And finally, Anne, what are you proudest of?
Oh, God. Well, I'm proud of what we achieved together, because I think that, it's one thing for a person to have an idea, it's something else for a lot of people to carry that out and to make it happen. And so I'm really proud of all of the people over the years who have made a major contribution to the work. And I'm also really proud that readers love us, and they put aside Facebook and other distractions to read Digger. I mean, the idea that we have 600 to 700,000 readers a month come to Digger, there's nothing like that in the country. We have more market penetration than any other news organization in the country. And, Dick Toffel told me, the former head of ProPublica, that Digger is the first news organization of our type to replace traditional news in the country. And that's a big deal. And that's all about people giving their support to Digger. It's about Digger giving back to the community. It's a two-way street. And so there's so many things to be proud of with this organization, because I guess really the biggest thing is that I'm not there anymore, and that's a good thing. And Sky has picked up the mantle, and I'm really proud of her work, and I'm proud of the team, and the fact the board, and the fact that you guys have, it's not about one person, it's about this community of people who come together to produce news for the benefit of all of Vermont. And that's what I'm proudest of. It took me a while to get there, sorry.
Thank you, Anne, for all you've given us yourself, and all you've given us in Vermont and nationally, and all the seeds that you've tossed out onto the landscape that are blossoming every single day and turning a light on in dark places.
Thank you, David. This has been wonderful.
my true pleasure to introduce Vermont Digger's new CEO, Sky Marsh. Before we go on here, I do need to say a couple things about this. Now, we knew as a board, finding somebody to fill such an important role wouldn't be easy. That's why we launched a national search. Now, we went coast to coast. After months of interviews and follow-up conversations with candidates all across the country, we found our next CEO right around the corner in Middlesex. And Scott comes to Vermont Digger with an extensive career in local and national media, including roles with Burlington Free Press, Times Argus, Vermont Life, and The Nation magazine. Most recently, she served as Vice President of Sponsorship and Market Strategy for Chalkbeat, one of the largest nonprofit news organizations in the United States. Sky is a force. She has hit the ground running this year and has been doing an awesome job. And it is my real pleasure to bring up Sky Marsh.
David and Ann again for that incredible conversation. So, just get my notes here. I first met Ann when I was working at the Cookie newspaper that Maria Arcangelo mentioned. And I was a rookie reporter, and Ann was an editor. And I remember this one particular assignment. It was a private school that was opening, and I thought it was a run-of-the-mill community news story. And I was about to leave to go out, and Ann had a long list of questions that she wanted me to ask the school board. So I took those questions and, sort of privately in my head thought, wow, this is maybe a little excessive. I went to the school board and the volunteers and proceeded to ask them every single one of these questions. And I don't know how long later, they probably were sick of being kicked me out. I came back to the newsroom and filed my story, and I'll never forget. Ann looked up at me and she said, wow, you asked every question I wanted you to. And I would love to tell you that the story ends with me revealing that I got this huge blockbuster scoop. I didn't. But had there been something there, I would have gotten it. And that is because of it. So I think what tonight shows us is that Ann has built something bigger than herself. Vermont Digger is an essential public service. We provide for free access to critical information Vermonters need to make informed decisions about their lives and about their communities. Our work affects who has access, who has a seat at the table, who's driving the priorities, and whose problems do and don't get addressed. I am so excited to have the opportunity to keep building on this. Part of what this means to me is continuing Digger's legacy of being an innovator. In 2009, many scoffed at Ann's idea of a digital-only newsroom. Now, nearly 90% of Americans say they get their news on a digital device. And you were right. By using evolving technology and bringing even more voices into our reporting, we make our journalism more widely accessible to Vermonters of every stripe. Whether that's busy parents who need headlines in the morning, readers for whom English isn't their first language, people who use adaptive tools to get their news, leaders and lawmakers like many of you in this very room tonight who rely on our investigative work and our accountability journalism. We are all more informed and effective because of it. Vermont is lucky to have UT Digger, and that is thanks to Ann. Just like she was there for me during my early part of my career, she's been there for me during this transition. She was one of the very first people to email me when my hiring was announced to say congratulations, and she's been generous with her time and counsel ever since. Thank you, Ann. We appreciate you reading UT Digger. We appreciate your support. And we really appreciate your news tips, and some of you had some good ones, so please keep those coming. Sorry. Before I close, I want to give a heartfelt thank you to the Vermont Digger staff, not only for the tremendous work that they do day in and day out, but for making me feel welcome during my first 6 months in this role. They are a fiercely intelligent and deeply committed group of professionals. I also want to thank the board for their support and dedication in entrusting me with this great responsibility. And finally, I want to thank my wonderful husband, Brian, who has been incredibly patient and beyond supportive as I've taken on what I see as a professional opportunity of a lifetime. We're so grateful you joined us this evening. We are grateful for Anne, and we're so grateful that you will be with us for the next exciting chapter of VT Digger. Thank you.
We're at the end of the night here, and we've had a wonderful night tonight. And before everybody heads out, I want to just finish with a final word. As we know, as we've heard tonight, and as we know, it takes a lot to make this happen day in and day out. We know it takes a big, talented team to create quality journalism, the kind that Vermont Digger produces every week, week after week. Last year, this organization produced over 2,500 stories. That's about 50 a week. And that includes breaking news, state house news, and investigative journalism. It also takes loyal readers. Ann already mentioned this, but here's an amazing stat. The average readership of other nonprofit news organizations around the country is about 30,000 readers a month. Vermont Diggers, over 650,000 a month, including, on top of that, 42,000 email subscribers and 114,000 social media followers. And the last part of this, of course, is it takes financial supporters. Yes, we get some grants. Yes, we get some underwriting. But the bulk of our operating revenue is charitable giving. And that's all of you. So on behalf of the board, on behalf of the staff, we want to just express our heartfelt gratitude for your financial support to keep independent, nonprofit, local news strong in Vermont. We know, you know, there are a lot of headwinds out there. We've seen a slowdown in overall charitable giving. We know there's economic uncertainty. Inflation's persistent. And in order for Digger to be sustainable for the long term, we need to ask Vermonters to dig a little deeper to support reporting. But I'm really pleased to announce that one of our supporters has done just that. I'm so happy to report that in honor of Anne Galloway and her legacy, and in support of Sky's vision and the extraordinary work of the Vermont Digger team, we have received an anonymous gift of $50,000 for tonight's event. I want to thank that donor, of course. I want to thank all of you, because you support Digger in so many ways, and it wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you for a wonderful night. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Sky. Onward and upward from here. Want to let you know, please stay around. We have the room all night, right, Kate? Almost all night. The bar's going to be open for a while. If you have a drink, drive sober, get a ride. We want you to be safe and pick up the Daily Digger first thing tomorrow morning. So thanks, and we'll see you all real soon.